this session into two parts. The first part is we'll talk about interoperability. I sort of gave you an introduction to what is interoperability and why we should be doing it. I let my co-panelists talk about it from their perspectives. And we will then spend some time on the Ayushman Bharat digital mission to understand how we are building out a great system to deliver digital health, deliver healthcare using digital technologies. So I'll just introduce my panelists. Mr. Lanka Subramaniam is a technology and business leader with over 3 decades of experience in healthcare. He worked as the Senior Vice President, R&D, Digital Health. He has developed cloud-based health platforms, AI-enabled clinical decision support systems, diagnostic imaging products and solutions. Prior to this, he worked as a scientist in the Indian Space Research Organization. He is a proud alumni of IIT Kharagpur and IIM Bangalore. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. Yeah. You can do that. Chinmay and me go a long way together. We were colleagues in G Healthcare. So Chinmay has 20 plus years of healthcare industry experience. He has worked on digital and medical device portfolio, on radiology, cardiology, oncology, and SRC domain. Extensive experience on interoperability, product management, marketing, and solution strategy for global markets. Chinmay. Harish Vellapatt has 17 years of industry experience in healthcare. He has worked on software development and integration topics with various healthcare IT systems, lab information systems, hospital information systems, and doctor's office. Currently working with Bosch Healthcare as solution architect for development of medical devices and software as medical devices visualization, smart pathology solution for digitalization of blood smear and tissue. Sujith is the founder and CEO of Ibis Medical and Eightwe Digital Transformations. With over 20 years of experience in biomedical product development, he specializes in neonatal critical care and augmented reality. Currently, he is dedicated to driving digital health transformations in the medical device industry, focusing on both pre and post-hospital care. So may I request Mr. Subramaniam to give his insights on interoperability.
Thank you. Am I audible? Good evening, everybody. The study, basically, the research study stays on the interoperability and then not having a standard to exchange the data. 50% of the clinically relevant information is missing for the physicians to take a clinical decision because if they do not follow the standards. That's the first study, a research study. A lot of data, millions of data records are exchanged and continuously the data records are getting exchanged. And if they are not following the standards, what happens is that the physician spends a lot of time in finding out what is the relevant information. That's the second problem. Not having interoperability is we'll come to that. The third research study which I would like to highlight here is that many of the medical errors that happens is because the data is not coming correctly and it is missing in the entire electronic health record. So these are some of the research studies. So if you want to solve these kind of problems, we needed to find a standards and in every device, software that is developed should be able to handle these standards and also give the output in that standard format so that we can exchange. That will enable the digital transformation and that will also enable the clinical effectiveness, productivity, plus the operational excellence within the clinical workflows. So how do we get there? So instead of coming to the challenges and then the interoperability of that particular topic, so we need smart aggregators. Once we have the smart aggregators, we should be able to pull the data, what is required for us, and then the clinician can give a proper diagnosis based on that, and the treatment can be done. So that requires interoperability of the data across the heterogeneous IT systems and heterogeneous systems across the clinical world. That is a fundamental way of looking at things, that we need a smart aggregators of the data. That also helps in exchanging the data, because when we talk about a clinical operating environment, the data needs to flow from different partners in the clinical ecosystem, the collaborating partners, so that they have the same synchronized view of the data. If you do not follow standards, then everybody has the silos data, and every physician has his own view on the silo data, which may not be the correct one to look at it. So we need a synchronized together. So this is where the smart aggregations and the interoperability play a role. Then it also improves your clinical efficiency, because if you have the data which can be aggregated and also in a standardized format, we don't need to refer a duplicate test. And also, a lot of filling of the manual forms can be avoided, so that we have a synchronized data. That also, interoperability will bring us those kind of synchronized way of looking at things. It will reduce the cost to the patient. As I said, that if you do not have a duplicate test and referrals can be avoided because of that particular duplications, then the cost of for the patient care and the efficient care will come in, quality care will come in, precision medicine can be enabled through that. Second is basically is that the patient himself or herself need not carry the printed records, which is also a burden. So if you have these electronic health records, which is following standards, then that will help in different ways, and also these are the opportunities and the challenges which I outlined.
Thank you, sir. May I now request Chinmay to talk about data interoperability. So data in the medical world is data per se, and then the images. Images are very huge data sets, so we need a different set of standards. So Chinmay, your views on HL7 DICOM and the standards that are required.
Thank you, Dr. Prabhu. Good evening, everyone. So interoperability, so the power of interoperability. So you already seen that on the NH, the speaker has already shown an example like how they transition. So when I started my career, when I went to a hospital, there was a hardcore medical record. So they used to have that medical record, and when patient come for consultation, they used to put it on doctor's table for the consultation for the next day. So that revolution happened from there to the electronic record, right? The EMR. So the EMR came, which reduced the paper, right? And then become the electronic workflow. And now we are talking about data. So the data exchange, how seamlessly we can talk to different systems. So when we talk to, let's say, radiology, cardiology, lab, pathology, so the data exchange happened. So think about a situation where you go to a hospital or go to a department and you have to fill the same form again and again. So see how, if you think about the world, the next generation world, so the data will follow you. Before you go to the hospital, your data is already available. So that's the concept of ABDM is coming into picture. So how we can seamlessly integrate and harmonize the data for the patient securely. So if you think that more on the revolution aspect, so I'll little bit talk about more on the product management, the roadmap aspect. So the revolution happened when from the paperless workflow more into the data-driven workflow. And now we are talking more on the big data. So now on the predictive and prescriptive analytics, we are moving into the next generation. So where we can get the data and then predict. So this is how the interoperability revolution is happening. And then let's say, for example, more on the product management aspect, when somebody asks me, oh, I want to develop this product, what do you want to develop on this more on the interoperability aspect? So mainly on the interoperability, I see the three big pillars. One is the technology, the Symantec, and then the workflow. So those are the three pillars on the interoperability. So the technology, how you communicate to the other system, like the HL7, DICOM, those are the standards. And the protocols, whether it's a TCP/IP protocol, or you send it through a file a message, or you send it through a, let's say, dump file on an Excel, how you communicate to the data. That's the technology. Symantec. Symantec is all about the data processing, the cleansing of data, the mainly harmonization of data. So we get the data from all the systems, right? And then this is the raw data. You can't just spit in into another system and say, hey, here is the data, and then go and consume it. Then the other system will be confused. So then we have to process the data. So then when you come into workflow discussion and say, okay, what data you want, we'll send you that data, and then you utilize that data responsibly, and then make decision based on that data. And the next step is a workflow. So if you're doing a workflow, then it's more on the, whether it's a radiology workflow, it's a cardiology workflow, or oncology workflow. So all those data flows down, and then you talk to the end user or the customer, and then you define those workflow to standardize those whole complete end-to-end workflow. So that's why if you see a little bit on the interoperability, I'll say the big role that plays is digitization. So when you go to usually I go to the hospital, and they say, I want to automate everything. Then I ask the question, the 5 why question. Are you having a clear workflow for your hospital or for your department? They say yes or no. If you don't have, then do you have the clear data? What do you want? No. Then do you have the right system which sends the data? No. Then the next step is you need to digitize. So first step is to become interoperability, you have to be digitized. So the message that I wanted to share with the audience is, to become an interoperability, you have to be digitized first. So you have to be digitally stable first. So that's why that's the message I want to give. Thank you.
Thank you, Chinmay. Hari from Bosch, please share your experiences.
Good afternoon, everyone. So from an interoperability perspective, from a medical device perspective, I would like to share experiences that we had using during our medical device development. So basically from the interoperability, you have the 4 major pillars. That's first one is the foundational. We will share the experience in that aspect. And then you have the semantics and the structural and the organizational levels. So we had a anemic, for anemia, we had a smart solutions, which was basically non-invasive hemoglobin monitor. Basically, we wanted to deploy this new device for the rural. This was all from an Indian perspective, Indian context. So we wanted for the ANC care, for the ASHA workers. So this smart hemoglobin monitor, we wanted to deploy to the Indian market. So first hurdle, that was the foundational part of the interoperability, was we have the data on the medical device. We wanted to reach the primary healthcare system, right? So that was the hurdle 1. The ASHA workers, at that time, we were using the notebooks that were provided to them to record each ANC care program they had. Luckily now, I think the things have changed with the Ayushman Bharat program. A lot of digital public goods are coming with mobile apps, with India Health Stack. But right that time, even now, to connect with a medical device, there's still gaps. So that's the foundational problem, reaching the data to reach the right place. And the next one is basically the semantic and structural. I think with the interest of time, that's a lot of things in that area we have solved, or we can say that it's a bit mature. The foundational is something which is, we think that is solved now, or which is basically, we think with IoT and everything, but I would say from our perspective, it's the most, unlooked, or that's the area that we would like to focus more. Like each medical devices are manufactured with different settings to basically, you have different types of connectivities. You cannot reach the HIS system because they are not open in public, they are not APIs. But luckily, I'm very positive about the Ayushman Bharat program, and the digital NHS stack that we have. And the last one is the organizational. I think semantic and structural, I'm just skipping. That's where this HL7, the fire, that we had experiences in that. Like one of the experience that we had was we were doing a smear solution. That's for the blood smear digitalization, the whole slide. Where we had this 40 GB of data that coming from a whole slide scanner, and we wanted to put on a DICOM. And the DICOM had a restrictions. And these are the challenges that we have faced in the semantic. And this, I think this is the structural part. Semantic is the workflow. I think we already discussed about that. And the last one is the organizational. That's sharing the data from one organization to another organization or getting a holistic view. That's very important when you develop the SAMD or you develop this new AI age medical devices. You need the complete profile. We also had hurdles. I would like to discuss more on that, basically from a personalized medicine that we were doing to get the data from cancer mutations, data that was available in Indian context, and so on. But I think that's what basically our experience was.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. I think we've been subtly told to wrap up. All the lights are going out one by one before everything is switched off. Sujith, we'd like to hear from you about your experience.
Yeah. See, basically, I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I would like to take it as a perspective of a startup or an entrepreneur way. So the doctors told what they are doing in Max and what they understand that almost 50% of the cancer they can early detect, and they shown to us how it's difficult to analyze the data, and Narayana Hridayalaya team, what they built the data and how they benefit out of the data, and Dell, what they done, they have around 460 million data of the lower end of the community. So everywhere we are bringing up with the data, and ABDM is trying to make it as a database and getting available for startups. So it's a golden opportunity. We can say it is a UPI for health tech. So before UPI, what happened in fintech, there was no much billion-dollar companies. After UPI, around 20+ billion-dollar companies there. It's all happening about interoperability. And of course, health tech will take time to come to interoperability because of the security and personal data and all. But India is putting a huge effort, and we are in early stage, but we are in the right time. So I'm very positive about the developments, and which will help startup. I can understand the time is not much. Yeah.
So thank you very much. I think that's about how much time we have been given. Before we leave, let's end it on a positive note. ABDM is one of its kind. Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission. Those of you who are following it will know it has got two bits. There is the health and wellness centers, which is the base of the pyramid, and then you have the tertiary care being provided at the top of the pyramid. The entire thing is stitched together digitally. We can triangulate. There is a citizen ID called ABA. There is a provider ID for the doctors. So I have ID. Wherever I'm registered, the medical council will confirm that I'm a doctor. So then all the quacks are removed from the equation. Then there is a facility ID. Using these three, I can track my patient as he moves from Calcutta to Chennai to Delhi to Jaipur to across India. I can track him. This is one. The second is all the data of the patient will get anonymized and pushed into your digital locker. They have built a mechanism where consent management is being managed. So if me as a doctor, I want to get his medical record, he will get a message saying, Dr. Thanga Prabhu is asking for your records. Do you want to share? Yes or no? Only if he approves, I'll get access to see his records. He can actually say for how long I'll have access, because if he's coming to me for a half-an-hour consultation, I don't need that record beyond that. So he can restrict that. He can also restrict certain things, like people don't want to reveal psychiatry history. sexual diseases. There are so many things which the patient might want to keep confidential. All these things have been put together very nicely, and SNOMED CT, which is a basic terminology in healthcare, has been purchased by the Government of India. Government of India pays $1 million annually to keep the SNOMED CT license current. So any of you startups who are working on medical tech, please ensure you are building on SNOMED CT, because with SNOMED CT, you are going international and you don't have to pay a paisa to anybody. And especially for commercial vendors who are building products out of India, you are free to build your product and sell it across the world. You don't have to pay SNOMED CT licenses. So build on standards, think global. India is the engineering capital of the world. Let's do it in India for the world. With that, we'll wrap up.
Dr. Thanga Prabhu and panel, firstly on behalf of TIE Bangalore and Matrix Forum, which I represent, apologies for the delay. Unfortunately, it's the last session of the day, and it was power-packed, and we got delayed for it. My request to you is that I work very closely with Derby. I'm a mentor there at Derby too. So what we will do is, as you suggested, at the convenience of the panel, we will do a webinar full-fledged in the coming months. Give us a date and time. We will propagate it to the community and do a webinar 1.5 to 2 hours as required to delve on the subject. And I'm sure that'll help to cover the topic in detail, and definitely you can make your points at that point of time. So with that, I would like to say thank you once again.